The sound of engines filled the air, a deep, thunderous roar that could make the ground tremble. A convoy of black leather-clad bikers rolled down Highway 16, sunlight glinting off their chrome. They looked tough, intimidating, the kind of group people usually cross the street to avoid. But beneath the heavy jackets and tattoos, they weren't just bikers, they were the Guardian Riders, a motorcycle club known for protecting abused children and helping broken families rebuild. They weren't outlaws, they were angels on wheels. And that day, they were about to meet someone who would change every single one of them. As they slowed down near a small gas station on the edge of town, the leader, Mitch Bear Lawson, raised his hand, signaling the group to stop. The crew pulled in, dust rising behind them. They were taking a break before heading to a charity event for underprivileged kids. But then, they heard it. A scream, high-pitched, desperate. A sound that sliced right through the noise of engines and laughter. "Help! Help! They took my mom!" Everyone froze. A small boy, no older than 7 or 8, came running from the nearby bushes, barefoot, clothes torn, face streaked with tears and dirt. He stumbled toward the bikers, waving his little arms, gasping for breath. "Please, they took my mom. Please help me!" The men looked at each other, their expressions turning from confusion to alarm. Bear crouched down, taking off his sunglasses. His deep voice softened. "Hey, little man. Slow down, what happened?" The boy, shaking and crying, clutched his arm. "2 men. They took my mom. They put her in a black van." "Please, they went that way." He pointed toward the road leading into the woods. Bear's heart clenched. He had a son about the same age. Without a second thought, he barked, "Riders, mount up!" Engines roared again, but this time it wasn't for show. It was a rescue mission. The boy, his name was Malik, climbed onto Bear's bike, clinging tightly to the man's vest. The others followed close behind. "Which way, buddy?" Bear shouted over the engine. Malik pointed again, tears streaming down his face. "That road! They went down there!" The road turned from asphalt to gravel, then into a narrow dirt trail winding into the forest. Bear felt his gut twist. If those men really had taken Malik's mom, every second mattered. "Razor, call it in," Bear ordered through his headset. Razor, the club's tech guy, already had his phone out, calling the sheriff's office. But there was no time to wait. They followed the tracks and fresh tire marks in the dirt. Then through the trees they spotted it, a black van, parked near an abandoned cabin. Bear slowed his bike, signaling silence. The riders cut their engines, the sudden quiet filling the forest. They could hear muffled shouting, a woman's voice. "Let me go! Please, my son!" That was all they needed. Bear nodded to 2 of his men, Tank and Ghost. Both ex-military, both trained for this kind of moment. They circled the cabin. Bear crept closer to the door, Malik still clutching his vest. "Stay here, champ. I got her, okay?" Malik's lip trembled, but he nodded. "Please bring my mom back." Bear gave a small smile. "Promise." With a swift kick, Bear smashed the door open. Inside, chaos. 2 men turned in shock. One reached for something, but before he could move, Tank had him pinned to the ground. The other tried to run, only to meet Ghost's fist square in the jaw. And there, tied to a chair, was Malik's mom. Her eyes wide, tear-streaked, terrified. "Ma'am, you're safe now," Bear said, cutting the ropes with his pocket knife. The woman sobbed in relief, clutching his arm. "My boy, where's my boy?" Bear smiled, stepping aside. "Right outside, ma'am." She ran out of the cabin, and there he was. Malik sprinted toward her, screaming, "Mom!" She dropped to her knees, catching him in her arms. They clung to each other like the world had stopped turning. Even the toughest bikers stood frozen, some looking away, others wiping at their eyes. For a long moment, the forest was silent except for their sobs of relief. The police arrived shortly after, arresting the kidnappers. Turns out they were part of a human trafficking ring that had been operating nearby. Malik's mom, Danielle, had been walking home from her shift when they grabbed her. If Malik hadn't escaped and found the bikers, things could have ended very differently. Bear gave his statement to the sheriff, then turned to Malik. "You're one brave kid," he said, placing a heavy hand on the boy's shoulder. Malik looked up at him, eyes shining. "You saved my mom." Bear shook his head. "No, you did. You didn't give up." A week later, the Guardian Riders were hosting their charity event. Hundreds of kids from the neighborhood came, games, food, music, bikes lined up like a metallic rainbow. Malik and Danielle were there too. When Bear spotted them, he broke into a rare grin. "Look who we got here," he said, lifting Malik onto his shoulders. The boy laughed for the first time since that day. Danielle walked up, holding a small homemade cake. "I didn't know how else to thank you," she said softly. "It's just chocolate, but—" "It's from us." Bear chuckled. "You didn't have to do that." Danielle looked him in the eye. "You didn't have to save me either." There was a pause, heavy with gratitude. Later that night, Bear gathered his men. He lifted his beer can and said, "To Malik, the bravest little man I've ever met. And to his mom, who reminds us what we ride for." The men raised their cans, cheering. Malik smiled proudly, sitting on the back of Bear's Harley, the club's vest draped over his shoulders like a cape. After the event, as the crowd dispersed, Malik tugged at Bear's sleeve. "Can I ride with you again?" he asked. Bear smiled. "One day when you're big enough to reach the pedals." Malik looked serious. "I want to be like you." Bear knelt down, his eyes soft. "Then promise me something." "What?" "Promise me you'll protect people, and not with bikes or fists, but with kindness and courage. That's what makes a real man." Malik nodded solemnly. "I promise." Bear ruffled his hair. "Good boy." A year passed. The Guardian Riders grew bigger, more known, more respected. And on the anniversary of that day, Bear received a letter. It was from Danielle. "Dear Bear, Malik is doing great. He's back in school and he never stops talking about you. He even started a little club with his friends. They call themselves the Mini Riders. They help other kids with homework and share food with those who don't have enough. I just wanted you to know, you changed our lives. With love and gratitude, Danielle and Malik." Bear folded the letter slowly, his eyes misting. He turned to his crew. "Boys, looks like the Guardian spirit is spreading." Tank grinned. "Guess we started something bigger than we thought." Bear smiled. "That's the point, brother. One act of kindness can start a lifetime of change." Months later, the Riders were on another charity mission, this time at a school. Bear was standing near his bike when he heard a familiar voice call out, "Mr. Bear!" He turned, and there was Malik, taller now, holding a small donation box painted with the words Mini Riders, Helping Hands. Danielle stood nearby, smiling. Malik handed him the box. "We raised this for the kids at the shelter." Bear took it, his throat tight. "You did this?" Malik nodded proudly. "You told me to protect people with kindness." Bear's voice cracked. "And you remembered." He looked at the other bikers. "This kid's got more heart than all of us combined." The men laughed and clapped. Then Bear did something no one expected. He took off his Guardian Rider's patch, the one on his vest that read honor, loyalty, hope. He bent down and handed it to Malik. "Hold on to this. When you grow up, it's yours." Malik's eyes went wide. "Really?" Bear nodded. "You've already earned it." As the sun dipped below the horizon, the riders mounted their bikes again. Malik and Danielle waved from the sidewalk. Bear revved his engine, smiling under his helmet. For the first time in a long while, he felt complete. Because sometimes heroes don't wear capes. Sometimes they wear black leather, ride roaring machines, and carry hearts bigger than the open road. And sometimes the smallest cry for help can awaken the biggest acts of humanity. In a world that often looks away from pain, a little boy's courage made strangers stop and act. The Guardian Riders reminded everyone that strength isn't in muscles or machines, but in mercy. One child, one mother, one moment and a brotherhood. Of bikers who proved that kindness can roar louder than fear. So the next time you see a tough man in black leather, remember,